I play an archer, GM converts me to a monk. We had a new campaign and a different GM, so I wanted to try out something different from the norm. An archer sounded like an interesting challenge, so I built one. Tracking my ammo, scouting to plan combat, inevitably getting killed in close combat, because I literally don't have a second weapon. I was ready for the whole thing from start to death. The first game day we have the party is magically split up, so I climb a tree to look for them. Naturally the embodiment of death appears in front of me and plucks out my eyes. I'm now a blind archer. I hear a pack of rabbit dogs apparently coming up to me, so I do the only thing that makes sense, now that I'm worse than useless, and fall out of the tree to lay down and let the dogs kill me. The GM says I passed the test, turns out death was some kind of Zen embodiment and now I'm a monk, so I don't need a bow. I told him that I keep waiting for the dogs. DM didn't like my success, decided to retcon it. In one of my adventures I played a universe jumper. The GM introduced us to the cult of the Beg. They were a cult of raven worshipping cultist. They showed up aggressively, and I switched it to "Oh, I don't want to fight. What's your religion about?" The DM paused for a good 10 seconds before replying. "We worship ravens that lead our god back to resurrection." I replied, "Can they be prophets too?" "Yes. They lead us toward the righteous future." My character was a universe jumper and was built for every possible way to be extremely useful outside of combat. So, using the stack of popular books from a different universe item the DM gave me, I asked if I had Edgar Allan Poe. "Yeah, sure, it's a collection of your favorite books." 5 rolls later, and enough bullshitting the cultists, I introduced them to the raven that said nevermore and said it was news. DM got to the point he wasn't letting me pass rolls under 15 DC at this point, but somehow I managed to convince them that the talking raven poem was meant for them and wanted to tell them to summon their master nevermore. DM gave us a big speech of how we changed their mind, and this is where it gets weird. He gives us the win, then says but this would dissolve the cult, and I can't have that. So Imhana rewind to the meeting. All players were teely confused, none of them saw this happen before ever, but the DM very much held a grudge. He made all our rolls need a roll of 15 DC or immediately failed, anytime we got an upper hand or succeeded a roll. He'd make a sarcastic reply, "Oh, you know the god's language?" They look at you funny and decide to attack you first. You successfully investigate a puzzle. Yeah, it's a puzzle. You look through the window. Yup, you see glass alright. Suddenly he stopped letting us succeed in any waste world, make him need to improvise his story from its basic plot. We were there for combat and puzzle solving. Nothing else was seemingly allowed without the skills not working. We quit the game after that entire mess. Is it wrong to express confusion on a nonsense world? I recently got recommended to join a game at a public bar. The theme was Cyberpunk 2022 W/John Wick, at least according to the DM who I met a week beforehand. Day comes, I spent a solid few hours trying to figure out building a character sheet beforehand and finish up with some help there. And the game starts. We are given exactly zero information on the world, except that we start at the Continental from the John Wick movies. Zero. I figure I should give it a shot and roll with it, but it gets pretty difficult to do so when we are only told after the fact about 3 or 4 times that we don't have something that the character builder says we should, such as our weapons or even a phone. Eventually we get to some burned out church with a secret contract lair, where the DM forces us to, in the only solid mention of Cyberpunk this entire time, jack into the definitely not suspicious computer directly, even though near all of us have phones on our character or an equivalent, until he receives some pushback from 3/5 players. Not 14 minutes later he decided to stop the campaign, and I wake up a few days later removed from the Discord and a DM from him calling me argumentative and disruptive. Are all games like this? This is really starting to get old. DM gave us anti-magic crystals. Originally he thought that it would be something so hard to use and so damaging to keep around that he assumed the problem would solve itself. He explained lead line boxes would protect the group from getting affected by it and told us where to buy them and how the church lined its walls with cheap lead. Except there was an issue. I asked if it affected monks and Kai point abilities and said no immediate. So, my first thought was sweet. I can put this in my sword and beat up magic users that normally would kick my ass. And I was gonna lead line around the gen so I could turn on and off its effects. Suddenly my DM's response went to, oh, that shop is out of lead. Yeah, the church won't let you use their outside lead. Lead is actually one of the rarest things in my game. So I carried it in my hand and simply stayed far away from other players so I can keep it and keep the other players safe as well. We ended up having this big fight with a warlock later on. He got bloodied and began to make his escape. Except there was an issue. One speedy monk later, he was in range of the anti-magic crystal and completely subdued from making his portal. With him running straight to his exit and face-planting a wall, he ended up interrogated, all his cool magic items looted and him thrown out from the town terrorized by him. The DM then ended the session and said we did an amazing job. Once we returned to the game a week later, we ended up against another magic user, except he could portal away using paintings. We played off as being friends and got him to take us into a secluded room that was only accessed through paintings. The idea was for us to go in and lock him in place by disabling the portals with the anti-magic crystal. But the fact I could use the portals with the group, I went to use it and the DM smiles and goes, well, you didn't specify you put it in your inventory, only THST you're holding it, do a roll for me. Oh damn. Since it wasn't in your inventory, your character set it down when you got into the new battle and completely forgot. Can't go back now, the crystal was lost. I'm kicking a player out of my group for the first time, and it doesn't feel good at all. With all 3 PCs and myself been playing together for a little over a year, we went in person once everyone felt comfortable doing so. We started playing Curse of Strahd at that point. I'll also mention that we had all wanted to add at least 1, if not 2 more players, but we hadn't found anyone yet. Once we started that up, one player, the bard, started missing sessions. It started with 2 in a row. I would message after every session to make sure they were okay. I had finally gotten a response that they split up with their partner and needed time to get life straightened out. That's totally fine. I get it. They came back a week later and all was right with the world. Then it happened again. They missed 4 weeks in a row. Again, I messaged after every session to check in. It turns out they got a job in the evenings that conflicted with game time. Again, I get it. Life happens. Just tell me what's going on. So we changed to a day when they were available. I had no problem with it and neither did the other players. All was again right with the world. 3 weeks ago I was inundated with people that wanted to join the group all of a sudden. Not wanting to throw 2 new players right into COS, I devised a quick dungeon with a dragon, because why not, so they could get the gist of the game. I told everyone to roll characters and got no response from the bard. They didn't show and also didn't show last week. I'm done with the absences and it's not fair to the others who are there. The new players have quite a drive ahead of them and I don't want them to get there and not be able to play because someone didn't show without any kind of notice. So I'm kicking the bard out today. It's going to suck, but no one in the group has heard anything directly. All in all, not the worst horror story, but it has definitely caused me some grief. Rule proposal, write considerately. Long rune in paragraphs, uninterrupted stream of consciousness meltdowns, and posts with mounds of irrelevant details / convoluted aliases are not reader friendly. If your authorial voice sounds like it desperately needs to use the bathroom at a large amusement park with no maps. Hey, I get it, that's what rough drafts are for. Just get the ideas down on paper, but there is no time pressure to hit the submit button. You don't have to send in the unedited blob of thoughts. There's no reason to submit anything written in that fashion if you care about readability. Caring about readability refers to having a modicum of consideration about the people you want to read your submission. If you can't be bothered to give a shit about the audience, namely, your peers on this sub, I don't think you're a positive addition to the community. I think the subreddit should have stronger rules against these types of inconsiderate posts existing. underscore 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 underscore. And frankly, your decision to not even try to communicate helpfully is not a good trait for someone who wants to participate in a collaborative game like D&D. If you insist on posting like a neurotic telegram operator on an airplane about to crash into the Titanic, yeah, you probably are the bad guy. And entirely for reasons under your control. The DM's friend wanted to bang my child character. So back when I was 16 I was in a group. I went over my character idea in a session 0, and it was agreed that it would be alright and wouldn't be any problems. She was a changeling druid aged at 9 years old. I based her on Annie from League of Legends, even using one of her skins as my token. So everything is fine for a while. My character is taken care of by the group as kind of a little sister. That's until the DM said his friend wants to try out D&D, so will be joining our group. Let's call him Barry. Barry rolled a standard chaotic good rouge human and immediately introduced him as a playboy. My character was the only girl in the party, and I was the only female player too, so you can imagine where this is going. I ignore this weird comments and trying to hit on my character for a while before we get to a tavern. My character obviously couldn't drink, so asked for some milk. What I didn't know is that Em and Barry were private messaging, and Barry rolled successfully on stealth to spike my character's drink. My character became drunk and his advances got even stronger. Some fellow party members told Barry he was being a creep, which led into an argument before the session finished early. Between that session and the next session I received multiple DMs from Barry hitting on me. I told him I wasn't interested in him as I was 16, while he was in his 30s too, had a girlfriend. Ensue the homophobic messages. So we reach the next session. For one reason or another my changeling turns into an adult version of herself to try pretend to be her own mother. It was very obvious it was still her due to the way I played her and her distinctive appearance, but Barry decided to try hitting on her once more. She's technically legal now, so it's okay. Later in the tavern, as the party was going to sleep, my character went back to her room. Another player decided from now on my character wouldn't be left unaccompanied, which I'm glad for. Barry started going off. I'm going to try sneak into Op's room. Chaos ensued. I'm going to steal all of her things, DM allows it, and with an @20 all of my character's belongings. Inventory, even her teddy bear was gone, and he sold it off to the Rouges Guild. Another party member questions why he would do that to only my character, and in which Barry responds, because she's mega gaming. Both confused and fed up, I quit right then and there. Luckily for me, the other 3 players backed me up and left too. Man, I just wanted to be a lil arsonist. The downside of doing the right thing. So, a few weeks back, I left my table because we didn't want the same thing at the same table. Makes sense. If I had posted my grievances here, half the comments would probably have suggested I find another table. Now I'm into looking in LFG for a new table. I've sent over 10 applications, got about 3 or 4 interviews now, and to this point I just wasn't picked. I will still go through fitting games this morning and do it again to have a place at a table that better fits my style. But I get it. When a player clearly isn't happy at their table and they hesitate to leave, it's because they don't want to be where I am. Looking unsuccessfully, and every time I get a new message saying that they picked someone else, I'm wondering what I did or said wrong. So yeah, it's easy to leave a table. It's very hard to find a new one. Doesn't mean they shouldn't still leave. Just, there is a tangible cost to even the right choice. DM should have probably checked my attacks. So we had an encounter with 4 very powerful bandits in the middle of the woods. One downed me after I took him to bloodied with a bunch of monk attacks. So the man yanked the sword from my character. When I lucked out on saving throws and got up, he replied, "Aha, you can't do anything now. I have your weapon." My sword did 1d8 plus 4. My unarmed strikes are 1d8 plus 4. The sword was just sentimental to the character. So I went. The monk got visibly upset. Possibly the most upset the group has seen, from the small monk pivoting his tiny legs into a defensive position. He takes a martial arts stance. I'd like to use flurry of blows and I'll start with stunning strike with each attack until it succeeds. Enemy fails a saving throw. Enemy is stunned, and all attacks against him gained advantage. All the hits that failed were met with me using my lucky feat to reroll a success. I've never seen a DM gasp in disbelief so hard in my life. Turns out there was supposed to be reinforcement in a few turns. Except, they didn't, because my monk attacks annihilated and stunned their leader. The DM pulled us into a meeting after the session was over. Hey, I might not be able to play next week. That was the bad guy that was going to be a major part of the next 5 sessions. He was supposed to show up and show off how powerful he was in a brutal battle with the group and escape. He wasn't expecting immediate step of the wind use in move 1, flurry of blows, and stunning strikes to change that. The campaign group was quietly dissolved. We stayed friends and still laugh about it sometimes.